All right, what we're going to do first is we're just going to establish how to graph y equals sine theta. So basically, we just want to get the basic shape for sine here. And then once we have that basic shape, in later lessons, we're going to use the transformations that we already know to figure out how to graph it with transformations. But today, our only purpose is to figure out a basic graph for sine theta. And we're going to use the unit circle to graph sine theta. The only thing is we're not going to use pi over 4. So we're skipping all quarters. So just labeling this quickly, there's 0, pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and then 2 pi. And then what I notice about all of those is that they're evenly spaced all the way around. So when I switch over to the graph, I basically go, I just noticed from 0 to pi over 2, it's 1, 2, 3. And then from pi over 2 to pi is 1, 2, 3. And then pi to 3 pi over 2 is 1, 2, 3. It's always, and then 3 pi over 2 to 2 pi is 1, 2, 3. So the way I'm going to mark my actual graph is that it's every 3 is pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So the reason we skip pi over 4 is because fourths don't really work with thirds. To be able to represent thirds and fourths on a graph, we'd have to go to twelfths. So it's not something I want to do on this basic graph. So just for this first one, we're just going to go by pi over 6, really, is what this is all cut into. All right, now we're just going to label some points on the unit circle, which we already know, and then we can use those to fill in our table of values. All right, so we know sine is the y values. So filling this in, I'm just filling in the y values as I go around the circle. Once I get into the second quadrant, those values just repeat and are decreasing. Once we go down into the negatives, down below the x-axis, those are going to be negative values. But it's really just going all the way around this unit circle and filling these in. So here we basically did one revolution of the unit circle and filled it in, but if we wanted to, we could keep on going around the unit circle and everything would just repeat. So that's why sine functions and cosine functions, because you can just keep on going around, we call them periodic functions. So it's just a function where it's going to repeat every 2 pi in this case. Now to show what these points actually are, it's really just these y values. So I'm just going to draw in each of the y values. For 0, it's just the point, and then I just drag it over. Here, it's that y value for that right triangle, and then I drag it over, and then I just go to the next triangle, drag it over. Then it's the y-axis, and then we can, I think you probably get the idea, we can go a little faster, but we just keep on drawing in these y values for these right triangles, and that's what we're graphing. And then once you get once around again, we could just keep going. So at 2 pi, it's 0 again, so here we've done one full revolution, but now I could do this y value and the next y value as well. And you could just keep on going around over and over and over again, and it'll just keep repeating. So this is that periodic idea. All right, now we'll just zoom in. I'm marking the tops of each of these y values, and basically those are the points on the sine function. So we'll just start graphing that in, connecting all the tops. And there is what's often called a sine wave, or in this case, a periodic function. From anywhere to where it starts to repeat is considered a cycle. So one cycle in this case is from 0 to 2 pi. So the length of that cycle, which is called the period, is 2 pi. Okay, so we found the period by looking at this from 0 to 2 pi and seeing that's the point where the actual function starts to repeat, but you could have actually done it from pi over 6 to 13 pi over 6, or anywhere that it starts to repeat. Usually zeros or maximums are the best points to use to try and figure out a cycle or the period of a function. Okay, I'm just going to mark in now from the middle to the top, and I can also mark in green from the middle to the bottom. That's called the amplitude. The amplitude, it doesn't matter how you measure it, but it's always from the middle to either the top or the bottom. Basically, amplitude is the height of the wave. Okay, and lastly, what I'm going to do now is just highlight the points that if I were trying to remember my sine function, these are the points I want to memorize, okay? It's basically always the maximums, the minimums, and where the middle is. And what I always think for sine is that it starts in the middle, so at 0 it's in the middle, and then it goes up high, then it's back to the middle, then it goes low, middle, high, and this just pattern just keeps on going forever, and it's every pi over 2 that these points are spaced out. So it's like middle, high, middle, low, middle, high, middle, low, and it goes that pattern forever.